All right, let's jump right in, shall we? I'm fired up for this year's Baseball Hall of Fame class. This group is really something special.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
I mean, talk about making history. We got three big names coming in from the BBWA. Ichiro Suzuki, C.C.Sabathia, and Billy Wagner.
Each one of them a story in itself.
Exactly. And each one, like you said, a story way beyond just, the numbers and the accolades.
Absolutely.
And what really blows me away about this class, it's how each player, in their own way,
right,
kind of redefined what we thought was possible on the field.
Yeah, they really pushed the boundaries. Ichiro bridging those two baseball worlds, Japan and MLB. You got Sabathia constantly reinventing himself throughout his career. And then you have Wagner proving that you don't have to be a giant to dominate on the mound.
I love that. Dominance comes in all sizes, right?
Exactly.
So let's kick things off with Ichiro. I mean, his induction, it's a landmark moment for baseball.
It really is.
First Japanese position player to reach the Hall.
Yeah.
And get this, he almost made it in unanimously. I mean, for those keeping track, that puts him just one vote behind Mariano Rivera.
Wow.
Talk about mind-blowing.
It really shows you the kind of global impact Ichiro had on the game. And when you look at those combined hit numbers,
oh, man,
over 4,367 between his time in Japan and the MLB.
Yeah.
It's almost impossible to grasp.
It's almost like, is that even a real number?
Right.
It's so big.
And it's not just about him being a great hitter. I mean, he was a phenomenon. He transcended borders. He went beyond the game.
I can still picture it so clearly. That iconic batting stance.
Oh, yeah.
That high leg kick, that lightning fast swing. He wasn't just playing. He was an artist out there.
A true technician.
Absolutely. But what always got me was that consistency. Year after year, he just delivered.
And that's where his legendary work ethic comes in. There are so many stories about his training, how intense it was. I mean, people say he approached every batting practice like it was a Game 7.
Wow.
Meticulously studying every pitcher, every weakness.
And it's easy to forget he brought that same fire to his defense, too, right?
Oh, absolutely. 10 straight Gold Glove Awards, that's not just luck.
No way. That's pure dedication.
Speaks volumes about his commitment to every single facet of the game.
I remember his rookie year, 2001. He was an instant sensation. Rookie of the Year, AL MVP, hadn't been done since Fred Lynn in '75.
Special player from the very beginning.
All the hype, and he still exceeded it.
He did.
But even then, no one could have predicted what he'd do in 2004.
I mean, are you talking about the 262 hits?
262.
Still the record today. And honestly, I don't think anyone's going to touch it.
It's like, how is that even humanly possible?
Right. Think about it. That's almost 2 hits a game for the whole season.
That's absurd.
Oh, and he also won his second batting title that year.
Right.
With a .372 average. I mean, come on.
It's like he was playing a different sport.
Absolutely.
So we've talked about this international icon.
Yeah.
Now let's shift gears to like a force of nature on the mound.
Right.
C.C.Sabathia. I mean, the power he brought to every game, just incredible.
Sabathia was a different breed, Those stats, they tell the whole story. 251 wins.
Wow.
3.74 ERA, meaning he was giving up less than 4 runs every 9 innings on average, and over 3,000 strikeouts.
Oh, my goodness.
That puts him in some elite company, my friend. 18th all-time and 3rd all-time for lefties.
That's unreal.
He wasn't just collecting stats, though. He was winning the big games, too.
Absolutely. That Cy Young Award in '07 with the Indians just showed what he was capable of at his peak. But for me, for a lot of fans, I think his legacy was cemented in that '09 playoff run with the Yankees.
Oh, absolutely. Sabathia, instrumental in that World Series win, ALCS MVP that year. Tells you everything you need to know about his ability to perform in the clutch.
When the pressure was on, he delivered.
He wasn't just a workhorse. He was a clutch performer.
Yeah, and, to think he did all that, battling injuries, personal struggle.
Makes his story even more remarkable, Yeah. It really does.
So, speaking of overcoming challenges, right, Billy Wagner's path to the Hall of Fame, that's a whole other kind of inspiring. You picture a closer, you think big, imposing presence, someone who just dominates the mound physically.
Right.
But Billy Wagner, all 5 foot of him, completely flipped the script.
He did.
He might not have had the size, but man, that fastball. Electric, clocking in over 95 regularly, and his slider, oh, forget about it. Batters were just swinging at air.
Left looking silly a lot of the time.
422 saves, 8th highest in history. And if you're just talking lefties, second only to John Franco.
Wow.
But the number that really stands out to me is his ERA, a tiny 2.31. I mean, that's how few runs he was giving up on average for a closer. Almost unheard of.
And his WHIP, measures how good a pitcher is at keeping runners off base. Wagner's was an unbelievable .998.
Amazing.
Lowest of any retired reliever with at least 700 innings pitched.
Wow.
Basically, he was a master at just shutting things down.
Yeah. But here's the thing. I think what makes Wagner's story so interesting is that he wasn't always seen as one of the all-time greats.
Right.
He was playing at the same gut as Mariano Rivera and Trevor Hoffman.
Two legends.
Exactly, two of the most celebrated closers ever.
Yeah.
But when you look at the numbers, Wagner was right there with them.
He was.
Consistently putting up elite numbers. Yeah. But for whatever reason, he never quite got that same level of, attention, maybe.
It's true. He flew under the radar a bit.
So to me, his induction this year, it's extra satisfying.
Yeah, he deserves it.
He's finally getting his due, And it's a reminder that sometimes the most deserving players have to wait a little longer for their moment.
It's a good reminder that the Hall of Fame journey isn't always a straight line.
It's not a sprint. It's a marathon.
That's it.
But, it also speaks to how we're evaluating relievers these days. It's changing.
Absolutely.
For a long time, saves, that was the be-all and end-all.
Right, the gold standard.
But now we're digging deeper. We're looking at those underlying numbers.
Yeah, the things that really drive performance.
And speaking of changing perspectives, we can't talk about Ichiro without talking about the impact he had off the field.
Right.
He came to MLB when Japanese players were just starting to make their mark.
Yeah, you had Nomo, already a Rookie of the Year, Cy Young winner.
But Ichiro, his arrival was, it felt different.
It was a cultural event.
Yeah.
Ichiro, he brought this incredible blend of skill and discipline and this kind of quiet grace.
Yeah.
That just captivated everyone. It wasn't just baseball. He was representing a whole different style of play.
A whole different culture, really.
Exactly.
And, his success, it opened the floodgates for a wave of Japanese talent to come over.
Absolutely, guys like Matsui, Matsuzaka, Darvish.
The list goes on.
It's amazing how one player can have such a ripple effect, On the field, off the field.
Yeah.
Beecher bridged a cultural gap, and in a way, he helped globalize baseball.
I love that. So, thinking about breaking barriers, pushing boundaries, C.C.Sabathia's career is a masterclass in reinvention.
It really is.
He comes into the league, this young fireballer, throwing heat, racking up strikeouts.
Yeah, pure power.
But as he got older, his whole approach changed.
It did, and that's what's so impressive, He adapted.
He did.
He evolved. He couldn't rely on that pure power forever.
Right.
So he develops this cutter, refines his control, becomes a master at pitching to contact.
Like he learned how to win all over again.
In a totally different way. Pretty amazing.
Yeah, and for me, one of the most inspiring things about Sabathia is how he handled those challenges, off the field. He was so open about his struggles with alcoholism, the impact it had on his career.
His willingness to be so vulnerable, it was powerful.
He really was. He broke down a lot of barriers.
He did.
Helped destigmatize addiction. Showed us that even the toughest athletes can struggle.
Exactly. It can happen to anyone.
It's a reminder that success isn't always a straight line, And asking for help, that's strength, not weakness.
Couldn't agree more.
So here we have these three players.
Yeah.
Each with these incredible but very different journeys.
It's true.
And they all end up in Cooperstown together.
Pretty amazing.
It makes you think, what does this class say about the future of the Hall of Fame?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think this year's inductions, they feel like a real turning point.
They do.
You've got Ichiro paving the way for more international players to get recognized. We're seeing this globalization of the game,
Yeah.
Talent coming from everywhere.
All corners of the world.
And the Hall of Fame, it has to reflect that.
It does.
And it makes you think about those other players on this year's ballot.
Yeah.
Guys like Carlos Beltran, Andrew Jones.
Right.
They both got a lot of votes but fell short.
They did.
But their cases are interesting because they raise those questions about how we evaluate players in the context of their era, Both Beltran and Jones, incredibly talented.
Oh, yeah.
But their careers, there was some controversy there.
Yeah.
It's a good reminder that the Hall of Fame, it's not just about numbers. It's about legacy. It's about impact.
And those things, they're complicated.
They are. It's a conversation that's going to keep evolving.
And as the game evolves.
Exactly.
And then you have those first-year eligible guys like Felix Hernandez, Dustin Pedroia.
Oh, yeah. Those are interesting cases.
Hernandez, dominant pitcher, but for a shorter period of time.
Right. His peak was bright, but shorter.
Pedroia, longer career, very consistent, excellent player.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe his numbers aren't as flashy.
It's true. For some voters, that matters.
It'll be fascinating to see how their candidacies play out over time.
I'm curious, too.
It's a good reminder that this whole process, it's a marathon.
Definitely not a sprint.
And it's a process that sparks debate.
Oh, yeah, it gets people talking, arguing.
And that's good for baseball. Makes us think critically about what matters, how we define greatness. As we wrap up our deep dive into this amazing Hall of Fame class, I'm just left with this feeling of awe, I know what you mean. These players, they represent everything great about baseball. The talent, the dedication, the perseverance, the love for the game.
The heart.
And their stories, they're going to inspire generations of players and fans.
For years to come.
So, to you listening out there, we leave you with this. What will your baseball legacy be?
Good question.
Player, coach, fan. Even if you just love the game, how will you leave your mark?
Something to think about.
It is.
Yeah.
And as you think about the journeys of these Hall of Famers, remember, greatness can take many forms.
You can.
Find your passion, embrace the challenges, and make your own mark on the game we all love.
Well said.
Well said. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the Baseball Hall of Fame class of 2025. Until next time, keep swinging for the fences.
So long, everyone.
It's funny, when you think about a closer,
you
usually picture like a big, imposing figure.
Right, someone who just takes up the whole mound.
Yeah, physically dominates, intimidates the batter just by standing there.
For sure.
But Billy Wagner, all 5'10" of him, it kind of turned that idea on its head,
He really did. He proved size isn't everything. Huh?
Absolutely. Yeah. He might not have had that, towering presence.
Right.
But, man, that fastball of his.
Oh, it was electric.
Electric. Regularly hitting over 95.
And that slider. Nasty. Just filthy.
Batters had no chance. Just swinging at air.
So many strikeouts.
Yeah. He racked up 422 saves.
Which is?
8th highest in history, by the way.
Wow, that's impressive.
And if you're just looking at left-handed closers, he's second. Only to John Franco.
Yeah, that's elite company.
But honestly, the number that gets me the most is that ERA, a minuscule 2.31.
Tiny.
That's how few runs he gave up, on average. For a closer, you almost never see that.
It's incredible. And then you look at his WHIP, right?
Yeah.
Which is basically a measure of how good a pitcher is at preventing base runners.
Right, keeping guys off the bases.
Wagner's WHIP was a ridiculous .998.
Oh, wow.
That's the lowest among all retired relievers with at least 700 innings pitched. Basically, the guy was a master at shutting down innings.
Just lights out.
Yep.
But I think what makes his story so compelling, so interesting, is that he wasn't always recognized as one of those, truly elite closers.
Right. He kind of flew under the radar a little bit.
He did. And it's wild because he was playing at the same time as Mariano Rivera, Trevor Hoffman.
Two of the best to ever do it.
Exactly. Two absolute legends. And yet, when you look at the numbers, Wagner was right there with them.
Statistically, he was every bit as good.
Consistently putting up incredible numbers, but for whatever reason, he never got the same level of, attention, recognition.
Maybe it was playing in a smaller market for some of his career.
Could be.
Or just the fact that Rivera and Hoffman were so dominant and got so much attention.
Yeah, it's hard to stand out when you're in the same era as those guys. So his induction this year, it feels, extra special.
Yeah, a long time coming.
Finally getting his due.
Exactly.
And it's a good reminder, that sometimes the most deserving players, they have to wait a little longer for that recognition.
It's true. Sometimes it takes a while for history to catch up.
It really does. But, it also speaks to how we're evaluating relievers now, how it's evolving.
Oh, yeah, for sure. The game's changing. The way we look at stats is changing.
Right. For a long time, saves were everything. That was the ultimate measure of a closer.
Yeah. You got saves. You were the man.
But now it's different. We're looking deeper.
Right. We're looking beyond just the surface numbers.
We're trying to understand the underlying factors that really drive performance.
Exactly. And that's a good thing. It gives a more complete picture of a player's value.
Absolutely. And, speaking of changing perspectives, we can't talk about Ichiro without talking about his impact off the field.
Absolutely. His arrival in MLB was huge. It was right when Japanese players were starting to make a real mark.
Yeah, you had Hideo Nomo already, Rookie of the Year, Cy Young winner.
Right. He broke down a lot of barriers.
He did. But Ichiro, his arrival, it felt different.
It felt like a cultural phenomenon.
It did.
Ichiro brought this incredible blend of skill, this intense discipline, and this, like, quiet grace, you know?
Yeah.
And it captivated American audiences. He wasn't just playing baseball. He was representing a whole different way of approaching the game.
A whole different culture.
Exactly.
And his success, I mean, it really opened the door for a ton of Japanese talent to come to MLB.
Oh, yeah. Guys like Matsui, Matsuzaka, Dorvish. So many great players followed in his footsteps.
The list goes on and on.
And it's incredible to think that one player could have that kind of impact, you know, both on the field and off.
He changed the game.
He really did. He bridged a cultural gap and helped globalize baseball in a way.
And now thinking about, like, breaking barriers, pushing boundaries, C.Sabathia's career, it's a fascinating case study in reinvention.
It really is. He was constantly evolving.
Right. He comes into the league, this young fireballer, throwing nothing but heat.
Racking up strikeouts left and right.
But as he got older, his whole approach changed.
It did. And that's what makes him so special, you know? He adapted. He didn't just try to keep doing the same thing.
He knew he couldn't just rely on that pure power forever.
Exactly. So he develops this cutter, gets better at controlling his pitches, and he becomes a master at pitching to contact.
It's like he learned to win a whole different way.
Exactly. Reinvented himself.
And I think one of the most inspiring things about Sabathia is how he handled all this stuff off the field, the challenges.
Yeah, he was incredibly open about his struggles with alcoholism.
He was, and about how it affected his career, his life.
That kind of vulnerability, it's powerful, you know?
It really is. It breaks down barriers, helps destigmatize addiction.
Shows that even the toughest athletes can be struggling with these things.
It can happen to anyone.
Right. And it reminds us that success, it's not always linear. It's not always a smooth path.
And sometimes asking for help, that's the strongest thing you can do.
Couldn't agree more.
It's pretty amazing when you think about it.
What's that?
You have these three players, each with such different stories, such different paths.
Yeah.
And they all end up in Cooperstown together. This year...
It's a special class, for sure.
It really is.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder what it says about, like, the future of the Hall of Fame, you know?
Yeah, that's an interesting thought. I think this year's inductions, they feel like a real turning point in a lot of ways.
In what way?
Well, like, you've got Ichiro, right? He's paving the way for more international players to get that recognition.
Yeah.
I mean, we're seeing the game become more global, talent coming from all over the place.
It's true. All corners of the world.
Exactly. And the Hall of Fame, it has to reflect that.
It does. It has to evolve with the game.
Right. And it makes you think about some of those other players on this year's ballot.
Oh, yeah. Like who?
Guys like Carlos Beltran, Andrew Jones.
They both got a decent number of votes.
They did, but they fell short this time around.
Yeah. But their cases, they bring up some interesting questions, right?
They do. They make us think about how we evaluate players, especially in the context of their era.
Because the game changes.
Right.
What's considered great in one era might not be in another.
Exactly. And with Beltran and Jones, I mean, they were both incredibly talented.
Oh, without a doubt.
But there was some controversy surrounding their careers.
There was. And it's a good reminder that the Hall of Fame isn't just about stats on a page.
Right. It's bigger than that.
It's about legacy. It's about impact. And those things, well, they can be messy.
They can be complicated. It's not always black and white.
Exactly. It's a conversation that's going to keep going.
Oh, absolutely. And then you have those first-year eligible players.
Yeah, who are you thinking of?
Guys like Felix Hernandez, Dustin Pedroia.
Those are going to be interesting to watch, for sure.
Hernandez, he was such a dominant pitcher.
Yeah, for a good stretch there.
But his peak was, I don't know, maybe a little shorter than some would like.
Maybe. But man, was he fun to watch during that peak.
Electric stuff.
And Pedroia, a model of consistency.
Yeah, a grinder. Played the game the right way.
But his numbers, I don't know if they're going to be flashy enough for some voters.
It'll be interesting to see how those debates play out.
Yeah. It's a good reminder that this whole Hall of Fame thing, this voting process...
It's a marathon, not a sprint.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It takes time. And it sparks these debates, these discussions.
And that's good. Keeps people talking about baseball.
Makes us think critically, you know, about what we value, how we define greatness. So as we wrap up our deep dive on this incredible Hall of Fame class, I'm just left feeling, I don't know, a little bit in awe.
I know what you mean. It's inspiring.
These players, they represent the very best of the game. The talent, the dedication.
It's perseverance.
The love of the game.
And their stories, I mean, they're going to continue to inspire, right?
Oh, absolutely. For years to come.
So to everyone listening out there, we leave you with this thought. What will your baseball legacy be?
Wow, that's a powerful question. It is. Whether you're a player, a coach, a fan, or just someone who loves the game.
Right. We all have a role to play.
How will you leave your mark?
That's what it's all about.
It is. And as you think about the journeys of these Hall of Famers, remember, greatness comes in many forms.
Couldn't agree more.
Find your passion, embrace those challenges, and leave your own mark on this beautiful game.
Well said.
Well said. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the Baseball Hall of Fame class of 2025. Until next time, keep swinging for the fences.